The Worst Equestrian Necromancer, Chapter 5, 40 Years After Adoption. The soft music of an incoming call woke Celestia from a much-deserved afternoon nap. She blinked sleep from her eyes and she stood with a wobble. She briefly debated ignoring the call and going back to sleep, but Ragar warned her that he might need help soon. She sighed and accepted the call, only to be greeted by a strange sight, even by Ragar's standards. Though Ragar was in his normal robes, part of his clothing being on fire was new. So were the small holes scattered over the robes that revealed bits and pieces of the bony body underneath. He was also actively running from something.
Ah, Princess! Ragar seems to be in a spot of trouble!
She could agree, especially when she saw a blast of red magic flying over Ragar's head. He seemed calm about it, however, so there was no reason to freak out quite yet.
What seems to be giving you trouble, Ragar? Do you need me to come over to your lair to assist? You'd need to give me directions, of course.
Ragar calmly jumped to avoid another orb of energy sailing between his femurs.
No, nothing serious, but hypothetically, if Ragar happened to have a recently ascended alicorn in his house, how would Ragar ground his, growing pains?
And now Celestia had a reason to freak out.
You have an alicorn in your lair?
Ragar had to speed up to avoid what appeared to be a small bug made out of pure fire.
Ragar said hypothetically, you have no proof Ragar taught Black Sun how to ascend?
Now Celestia had even more reasons to freak out.
Black Sun is an alicorn? When did this happen?
Ragar broke into a dead sprint.
Hypothetically, Ragar's not confirmed any of this. However, Ragar would guess maybe 30 minutes ago.
Celestia nearly blew a fuse.
You ascended an alicorn without any grounding equipment nearby?
Then she paused for a moment.
Wait, how did you even learn to do that?
Ragar ducked into a low slide, a solid beam of energy nearly grazing his skull. When he moved back into view, his mouth was open in what was normally a smile, though Celestia couldn't be sure in the current circumstances. He sounded like he was happy when he spoke, though.
Ragar learned the spell in one of your books. It was meant to rely on friendship, though, for some reason. Bah, it's much simpler to use the blood of a phoenix. Willingly given, of course. Ragar pities the fool who attempts to steal phoenix blood. However, the spell only works for unicorns, so Black Sun volunteered to be Ragar's test subject. Ragar did not know this would happen.
Celestia let out a few deep breaths. Not only had he used the spell meant for 6 ponies to cast, he had also bypassed the safety lock she had snuck into it. She let out a silent scream, which helped her calm down slightly, though not as much as watching Ragar skid across the ground when an orb of energy smacked into his skull. That calmed her down enough to actually answer Ragar's original question.
To ground a new alicorn's magic, they must either be helped by another alicorn who can control the extra magic, or sleep for at least 12 hours while their body adjusts. I could be there shortly if...
She was interrupted as a spell made out of nebulous black energy flew from Ragar's hand. He calmly climbed back to his feet, patting out the fire still consuming his tattered robes.
We had talked about it, but we had decided Ragar should only do that if there was no other option.
Celestia stared.
Did you just knock out your own son?
Ragar nodded and sent a few more spells from his hands.
Of course, it was the smartest course of action. Besides, he lost Ragar's head last week.
Celestia was forced to replay that last sentence a few times to understand it. Black Sun, the stallion who had been calling her once a month specifically to complain about Ragar's lack of a filing system, had lost his father's head. Then Ragar, who dotted on Black Sun like he was still a colt, had knocked him out because it was the simplest way to contain his power. That seemed out of character for both of them. She was obviously missing a few pieces to the puzzle.
How did he lose your head?
Ragar shrugged.
We had been practicing the dark and forbidden arts. Ragar believed a spell that we were experimenting with was less effective than bucking. We had to test that theory, so Black Sun bucked Ragar's head to gauge distance. We couldn't find it, so I had to make a new one.
Celestia had to replay that sentence as well. Not only is his head removable, but he could make new ones. This was just gonna give her headaches, no pun intended. She eventually decided that any time they were experimenting, they went insane. That explained everything neatly.
Very well. What possessed you to make your son a scion of a natural element without at least warning me?
Ragar laughed.
Yeah, every evil overlord must do something in secret. Plus, Ragar was at least 80% sure it wouldn't do that. Ragar thought that the spell would simply convert excess magic into life force, thus allowing Ragar to increase the lifespan of young Black Sun. Though immortality is good to Ragar's guesses. Less fun, though. Ragar's disappointed as we brought out the good blood ritual equipment.
Celestia took the high road and ignored that entire sentence. Besides, every time she asked for details about his use of blood magic, Ragar said that he had bought blood from hospitals. That made it not her problem, as only griffins and zebras used non-magically generated blood.
That is a sad turn of events, though I'm sure Black Sun will apologize when he's awake. However, do you know exactly what you've done?
Rhaegar smiled as wide as he possibly could, which looked uncomfortably like him dislocating his jaw.
Of course not. It would hardly be a worthwhile experiment if Rhaegar knew how it would end. How could Rhaegar possibly further his evil goals without gaining more knowledge?
Celestia nodded before yawning.
Yes, I can see how that would be a problem. Let me spoil it a bit. Black Sun is now permanently bound to whatever natural emotion, object, or force he is closest to. If he is not careful, he could very well allow himself to be taken over by an aspect of his own dominion.
And now she was sad. Great. She lowered her head onto her pillow. Rhaegar looked concerned for a moment.
Princess, do not worry about Black Sun. Both he and Rhaegar knew the risks. Besides, he'll have the 2 best tutors in all of Equestria if he ever needs a hand. Or at least he will in time.
Celestia nodded, her dour mood barely lightened.
Yes, if he is willing to accept my help, then the 2 of us will make excellent teachers.
Rhaegar slapped her dour mood out of her with the force of a small carriage.
Rhaegar? Teach an Helicorn? Rhaegar has no clue. No, Rhaegar meant you and Luna. She should be getting back in a few hundred years, correct?
Celestia's mind shut down. It took several minutes and many worried calls from Rhaegar before she managed to shake off her confusion.
What do you mean?
Rhaegar looked utterly surprised, perhaps more so than Celestia had ever seen before.
Wait, you didn't know that Luna would return? The elements have safeguards in place. For such a minor case of possession, even if you channeled the elements and said they were not by air and wind, they would not have permanently banished her. She had a 1,000-year exile on the moon. I think there's a bit over 300 years left or so.
He tapped at his chin with a finger before throwing it in the air.
Or something like that. It was all in a terribly boring essay in your forbidden section.
Celestia was frozen. In 330 years, she would see her sister again. She had already waited over twice that already. She was in the home stretch without even having known it. She couldn't contain her joy as she jumped in the air and fluttered about.
Rhaegar, you beautiful skeleton! How can I ever thank you?
She even tried to hug the projection and rolled through it, laughing. Rhaegar was smiling at her obvious delight.
Oh, it is nothing, Princess. Rhaegar would have told you sooner if he was aware that you didn't know. But if you could, Rhaegar thinks Black Sun may want some lessons on being an Alicorn. Could you please allow him a visit?
Celestia's smile never left her face.
Of course, you're cordially invited as well, though I doubt you'll descend into the snake pit so easily.
Rhaegar shook his head with a strange clacking chuckle.
Of course not. Besides, Black Sun has been getting bored. He hasn't gone exploring in weeks. As soon as he's finished studying Tyrik's old things, he was raring to go out again. Oh, speaking of my son, Rhaegar should go make sure he's comfortable while he sleeps.
Celestia was more than happy to end the call, having already started thinking through the preparation she would need to do for her sister's return. She finally fell asleep an hour later, happy dreams about her sister coming home filling her head. The midnight guard of Celestia's chambers was a respected position. A pony at that door must keep watch against danger, making sure to awaken the princess in time for sunrise. And perhaps most importantly, quietly ignore everything that came from the bedroom. Celestia had always had strange dreams, and she could sputter out prophetic revelations that could damn a pony to insanity. In the immortal words of the very first door greeter, you didn't hear nothing. Tonight they earned their checks, as at exactly midnight they heard Celestia yell,
Did he say that he had Lord Tyrik's things?
Both guards looked at each other and nodded. We didn't hear nothing. And thus the cycle continued. You give your son or daughter godlike powers, and what do you get? Them trying to kill you. Sounds like the average kind of family. I'm just kidding. No, it is not. Anywho, let's get on to our magical donators. Top donators are 630, Peter Coldhard, J Tinman, Darkside, and Only One Thing. Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Rollins, Crazy Color 557, Stu Hex, Sword Brother and Modred, Omicron Library, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Hadzaza, Riot Soul, Dospo, and many more amazing people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.